Hi, I'm Bastian Fox-Phelan. I'm a writer, zine maker and musician, and I live in Newcastle on the lands of the Awabakal people. To begin, I'd like to acknowledge elders past, present and emerging, and that sovereignty was never ceded. So today I'm going to tell you a little bit about zines and how I came to make zines and how to make a zine. So a little bit about me. I've been making zines for 15 years, and I first came across zines when I went to a DIY punk festival called Belladonna in Wollongong, where I grew up. I was only, I think, 16 years old when I first came into contact with zines, and I was really kind of blown away by how creative they are and basically how much you can say and do with a zine. They're really kind of limited only by your imagination or by what you want to put in them. So I started out writing zines just about kind of like cute fun things that I was interested in. My first zine series was about cats, because I like cats. And then I started making kind of like collagey how-to things, like cutting up children's encyclopedias, because I really liked the images and the way that the information was presented in the old books that I collected from op shops. And after a few years I started writing more about my own personal life in my zines. There's a type of zine, like a subgenre of zines called perzines, which means personal zines, and these are the zines that I really got into. But there's lots of different things that you can put in your zine, as I'll get into in more detail later in the video. But yeah, I think for me, what I really liked about personal zines, both reading them and making them myself, is that you could really share interesting stories from your life, and you can do it in this really unfiltered way. Basically, you know, I'm also a professional writer, and I have my creative nonfiction writing published in journals, and I've also been working on a book which will be published next year. But zines are really something different because they don't go through that same process of, you know, polishing something up, submitting it to a publisher, seeing if they like it or not, maybe getting rejected, you know, a bunch of times. Zines are really just something that you make in the moment and you don't labor over it too much. It's kind of really an impulsive and lovely way that you can express yourself, and then you get to share that with other people because it's so easy to, you know, after you've finished making a zine, just photocopy it and send it to a friend or go along to a zine fair and share it with other people. So over the 15 years that I've been making zines, this kind of like ability to just get your work out there and to not be too precious about it, to not try to make it too perfect, and the way that you can share it with other people. I think these are the things that really make me keep coming back to zines again and again, even though I have other ways that I express myself, you know, through music and writing, along with zines. So hopefully this has got you interested in making a zine. I probably haven't defined exactly what a zine is. I would say it's basically a handmade mini magazine on paper, and it's photocopied and it's distributed usually only in kind of like small batches. So you might make 20 copies of your first zine, for example. People do lots of different things with the zines though. There's lots of different ways of folding, binding, there's different shapes that you can make the paper, but generally they kind of stick to this format of like whatever you can get on paper that you can then photocopy. So basically kind of like flat and you know, black and white or color, and able to be made into a kind of little booklet. Great, so let's talk a little bit more about why people make zines. So zines really kicked off, I guess, in the 1930s when people were really interested in science fiction, and they wanted to find a way to talk about the science fiction books, I guess, that they were interested in. But I think you can probably say that anything that was independently published in the past is a kind of zine. And zines are especially good for people who have something to say, which is kind of criticizing the, dominant way of thinking in society, or criticizing a government or a political system or anything like that. So zines have often really been, I guess, kind of an outlet for people who have something to say, and also an outlet for people who are really excited about a particular thing and they want to communicate with other people. So in the 60s and 70s, zines were really popular with people who were interested in feminism, punk music, rock and roll, basically the kind of like youth culture that was starting to kick off at that time. In the 90s, zines became really popular with people who were wanting to share more of their personal experiences. And to this day, zines are, I guess, popular in certain circles, but never really a, big mainstream sort of thing. And I'm not really sure why this is. Maybe it's because generally when you make and sell zines, you're never going to really earn that much money. People only sell them for like a few dollars each, really. So perhaps some people, if they're creative, they move on to ways of making art that might be a bit more professional. Zines are basically always pretty unprofessional, which I think is a good thing, because like, who wants to live in a world where everything is the same? I've seen zines that are collage zines, art zines, photography, political zines, personal writing, collections of other people's writing, how-to guides are really popular, like how to service your own bicycle, or like how to grow a vegetable garden. And there's a lot of zines which are just kind of like funny and silly, and there's really no reason for them to exist except that the person or people who made them were having a good time. One of my favorite zines in that kind of genre is this one. It's called A Brief Look at Sinkholes Around the World and the Giant Cats That Cause Them. And it says, In the last few years, news of unexpected sinkholes and sightings of giant cats have made headlines with disturbingly high frequency. And then it has kind of like some funny instructions about what to do if you come across a sinkhole and a giant cat. And then it has a few examples. So that is, a firefighter stands next to a cave-in caused by a young exotic shorthair at a crossroad in Taiyuan, Shaanxi Province, 26th of December 2012. This one is a silver tabby. A silver tabby British shorthair looks on as workers repair a cave-in on a road. I don't know why, but this zine just makes me crack up. This is kind of like the standard size zine. So it's an A4 piece of paper, photocopied and folded. This one I really love. It's called How to Avoid Burning Out and Hating Everything Forever. So if you've ever felt burnt out by school or work, this is a good zine to read. It says, burning out is a term used to describe feeling physically and emotionally exhausted due to stress of working under demanding, difficult conditions. And I really like the way that they've kind of highlighted particular statements within their zine. Other people don't burn you out. Oppressive systems burn us out. We're all in this together. Another zine I really like is this one called Articulation, and it's really beautifully put together. It's been bound if you can see there on the edge. And on the inside you'll see it's basically extracts of this person's diary, along with really beautiful illustrations. So it's very personal, very heartfelt, and it's lovely to read because you really feel like you're connecting with this person's inner world, in a way that's kind of different to how people would write about themselves on social media, or even kind of talk about themselves in person. You're kind of getting like a little window into this person's life, which is a nice thing, I think. Another zine, which is the kind of standard size, but this time in colour. This is I Heart Succulents, Volume 2 by Ray White. And this is really just a basic, like, here's the thing that I'm super excited about, succulents, and this is how you can care for them. You know, if you're interested in succulents, you could pick up this zine and learn a little bit more about them. This kind of zine is nice because, like, you know, you could find this sort of information online, but it wouldn't have the same experience as you would get from reading about it in a zine, because this person's kind of presenting it from their own point of view, and they're sharing something that they're excited about, and that helps other people get excited as well. So if you have an idea for a zine, if there's something that excites you and you think, oh, well, you know, maybe a million people have already made a zine about this or posted about it online or whatever, it kind of doesn't matter. Like, when you're sharing something from your own perspective, it's always unique and it's always interesting, and like, some people might be interested, some people might not, but it kind of doesn't really matter. Like, if you're excited about something, any topic at all, it's a great idea to start there with what you want to make your zine about, because, you know, there's more of a reason for you to do it, and there's also, you know, it'll seem more authentic when people read it if you're genuinely interested in the topic. And authenticity is one of the, I guess, defining features of zines. They're really authentic, like, they come from the heart. Even the silly ones, I think, come from the heart, because there's kind of like no reason to put this much effort in to cut and copy and fold and staple and everything, unless you are, you know, genuinely interested in the in making the thing and putting it out there. Alright, so I think it's time for me to show you how to fold a mini zine, which is a really good place to get started with making zines because it's super easy and super simple. And what you'll need is an A4 piece of paper and a pair of scissors. Okay, so first things first, I want you to take your piece of paper and fold it in half lengthwise. Try to get the corners as close together as possible. It just helps the whole thing come together at the end. Okay, now open it up, turn it, and fold it the other way. Next, I want you to take that open edge of the piece of paper, and we're going to fold it back to the middle. Then you're going to flip the piece of paper and take this open edge and again fold it back to the center. Okay, it should look like this now. And you're just going to unfold these edges. What you should have is, I call this the mountain. And you want to grab it by the peak of the mountain. And you're going to cut from the folded edge just up that little line to the middle there. This part's always, like, it's really hard to do this on a camera so that you can see. Wish me luck. Almost. Okay, what you should have now is 2 mountains. Hopefully your cut is not as jagged as mine. Now this is where the magic happens, so grab those 2 mountains and pull them over like that. I'll show that to you again. So then you have like a plus symbol, and just gently squish those pages together, put it down, just reinforce those folds, and then final bit just goes on top like so. Ugh. Now don't worry if this is not perfect, like you can see my edges don't exactly align there. It's handy if you have it you know, pretty close together, but if not, it's, you know, it's not the end of the world. One thing that I love about zines is that they are kind of imperfect, and it's just kind of nice to have this low pressure creative outlet where you're not like, oh my god, I did the thing wrong. Like, it's kind of like, it gives a character, you know. So this is your 1-page mini zine, and it has now a front cover, page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4, page 5, page 6, and a back cover. You can fit a fair amount of content into these little zines if you write really small, or if you print it on a computer or type it on a typewriter. You can also just have really minimal content and it looks really nice. This is a mini zine I made quite a few years ago with an artist called The Fetus. It's called Potatoes, and it has the artist's illustrations and my writing on a cursive typewriter. I'm not sure if you can see that. It's like running writing on a typewriter. It's so cool. I wish I had one of these typewriters. So I think with these little mini zines, it's kind of nice to have a combination of writing and pictures, but you can really put whatever you want in there. Another mini zine which I really like is this one called Philosophical Frogs. It has frogs saying interesting things, interesting bits of philosophy. They're all pretty like not very optimistic, so I won't read them out. But I like the idea. This is another mini zine that I made about whale watching in Newcastle, and it just basically has tips for like where you can go in Newcastle to see whales. And right now is a good time of year to do that, so if you're not into whale watching, I highly recommend it. It's pretty spectacular. But, you know, as you can see, I've made a zine about things that I'm excited about, and might be time for you to think about, what are you excited about? Like, what do you want to put into a zine? It's always a good place to start. After you've made your 1-page mini zine, it's really easy to photocopy it. Basically what you need to do is you just unfold it, and because all of the content is on this one page, all you need to do is put it face down on the photocopier and hit copy. When you're making a booklet style zine and you're doing back-to-back photocopying, that's like a little more complicated, but it's not too hard to work out. You might want to look up a different video online to see how to do back-to-back photocopying if you're not familiar with it. But otherwise, I really recommend the 1-page mini zine as a good starting point if you want to get into zines. It definitely makes it easy to photocopy when you just have to photocopy one page. But on the topic of photocopying, I mentioned before that you know, anything that fits on a piece of paper is good for photocopying, but you can also get a little creative if you want to and try photocopying objects. Obviously be careful because the photocopiers can be fragile, the glass is, you know, you don't want to mess with it, but you can try photocopying something like, you know, I guess everybody's photocopied their hand at some point in time. One time I photocopied a bunch of soft toys and made a zine with like photocopied soft toys and fridge magnet poetry. So you can get a little creative with what you want to photocopy. But I would pretty much just advise that when you make your zine, be mindful of borders. So leave a little bit of room around the edge so that you don't put your content all the way to the edge, because photocopiers always have like a couple of millimeters of a border that they'll put on anything that you photocopy. So it's just good to keep that in mind. Don't make your art or your writing all the way to the edge of the paper or you're gonna have some bits cut off. Then again, I've seen a lot of zines where stuff gets cut off, and again, it kind of just adds to the charm. So if you ever find that you're making a zine and you're like, oh no, I did something wrong, just, you know, put that idea in the back of your mind, because zines are really a great medium for experimenting with things and for giving something a go and seeing how it feels to create this thing. And I hope that you've enjoyed this video, and I hope that it's given you a new skill that you can use, and also just a new way of thinking about art, because I think a lot of people are kind of told, especially when they are getting, you know, a little bit older, that you can only do art if you're like naturally talented at it, or if you want to do it for a career, for example. But actually everybody can make art, and you know, you can see kids when they're engaged in art making, they're not really thinking like, oh, is this good enough? Did I, you know, draw this line straight enough or whatever? They're just kind of playing and enjoying it. And I truly think that that's what making art should be. And I definitely feel that zines really help you to get in that frame of mind. So happy zine making, and I'll see you around. Bye!